A lot of the criticism of Operation Sea Lion revolves around the use of invasion barges. So we'll do a two-part section on them alone. There were nearly 2,000 barges initially in the invasion fleets, which fell to 1,859 after air attack. And it was essential that they get across for a successful invasion to be achieved. So in this first part, we will examine the barge purposes and their problems, whether they could have crossed the channel, and the last remaining barge and modern barge channel crossings, as well as the British barge channel crossings. Barges were to be used because they didn't have enough landing craft or ships. Most of the German merchant fleet had been interned in neutral ports or had been captured or sunk by the Allies due to the stupidity of Hitler and the way he talked to the Navy, or rather didn't talk to the Navy, about his intentions. Captured ships did not make up for the shortfall either. However, British intelligence didn't know this, and they suggested that it was possible for there to be simultaneous invasions in various parts of Britain. Nevertheless, they were able to collect 159 merchant ships of various sizes, and they were assembled to transport the invasion army. That wasn't enough, and more transport capacity was needed. The other problem was that the ships required a port or a way to transfer troops to beaches if a port had not been captured.
Barges were particularly valued because of their shallow draft, flat bottom, tough construction, and ability to rest on the sea floor in tidal waters while still loaded.
There were, however, many problems associated with the use of inland barges across the sea. Most of the barges were unpowered and had to be towed across or lashed together with a powered barge. It is said that the barges could not cope with the tides and currents of the English Channel because of this. However, tests and modern crossings show that that is false. And in fact, the Germans intended to take advantage of the tides and currents by moving along one side of the channel while the tide is going in that direction, then crossing the channel and then moving back again when the tide is going the other direction. It is said that the barges were designed for inland work and would also be swamped by waves because of a low freeboard. But actually, they were completely enclosed, and tests showed that the modified barges cope well with winds up to force 8, that is, waves up to 7.5 meters high. Another problem is that it's said that the ships and barges didn't have enough crewmen for them all. And Peter Schenk does mention that some of the crew weren't finished training until October 1940. But this statement ignores the fact that most of the barges had crew already because they came from occupied countries, and so they had the crews that normally manned the boats when they were undergoing normal commercial operations. So what was required actually was a few German crewmen for each boat to make sure that they stuck to their orders. But there was a mad scramble to find all and any German crew from across Germany that might have any experience on a boat. Of course, gathering all the barges was quite an achievement in itself. And Peter Schenk calls it a miracle that they managed to do it in 3 months. Another problem, of course, was that collecting the barges meant that they weren't able to do their usual business of carrying coal or whatever, and this caused a disruption of German industry. But if the invasion had won, that wouldn't have mattered. The war would have been over pretty quickly. And the last problem, of course, was that the barges, being slow and unarmoured, would be quite vulnerable to air and naval attack. And the Navy was unable to protect them properly.
British barges were also used to cross the Channel. They were first used for the Dunkirk evacuation in 1940, that is, Operation Dynamo. In that operation, 40 Dutch Schuits shallow draft barges of 200 to 500 tons evacuated 22,698 men from Dunkirk. At the same time, 48 British lighters or barges evacuated 4,726 men. Next, in April 1942, 1,000 dumb, that is, unpowered Thames barges or lighters, roughly similar to the continental river barges, were requisitioned. The British barges were to be fitted with stern ramps and, like the German barges, towed and beached by tugs or launches. Some, also like the German barges, were reinforced internally with concrete. Subsequently, 400 of these vessels took part in Operation Overlord, largely a specialist craft and fitted with engines, wheelhouses and rudders. Barge variants included landing barge flak, landing barge gun, landing barge vehicle, landing barge engineering or emergency repair, landing barge oil, landing barge water, landing barge kitchen, and landing barge cable. Landing barge vehicle 37, formerly the barge Zulu, even crossed to Normandy using sweeps, that is, oars, and an improvised sail, following an engine failure. This evidence of successful crossings of the English Channel by British and Dutch barges suggests that the German barges would also have made it across the Channel.
Another crazy feature of the plan was that the unpowered barges had to be pushed towards the beach when they got to their destination, and this meant that if there were any sort of waves, that they wouldn't get there in a straight line. However, I was astonished when I went to Hythe and visited the focus of the invasion, which is Beach B. First of all, to see that the shingle beach was a gently sloping beach, not like the steep beaches of Dieppe. And secondly, that there were no waves.
The Franz Christian is a formerly commandeered German river barge preserved at Heinrichenberg in northwest Germany as a floating museum. Built in 1929, she has a 200 horsepower diesel engine and a capacity of 289 tons. After conversion into landing craft B-8 Piemont, a motorized transport for amphibious tanks, she stood by in Boulogne for the invasion of England, before seeing active service in the Baltic from 1942 to 1945. Presumably this barge must have been at sea a number of times during those 3 years in the Baltic, and yet she survived.
Finally, let's have a look at some of the recordings on YouTube that show actual barges crossing the channel. And the first one is of the Dutch barge Spicker, which crosses to Portsmouth. And this barge is exactly the same size as the ones that they would have used in Operation Sea Lion. Then we've got a 65-foot barge towed through heavy seas off Dover, showing that it doesn't founder, and the stories about destroyer wash are just sheer nonsense. But there are also other ones, as the Dutch barge Anna from Ely to Wiesbach, and other journeys from the Spitz barge, and another Dutch barge, Cosmos. I think I'll put these in the show notes.